Hello, my name is Anna and I love trying vintage recipes. So today I'm trying 3 breakfast recipes from the 1960s. Today's recipes come to us from Betty Crocker's new Good and Easy cookbook. This cookbook was published in 1962 and I'll talk more about it a little bit later. She's back! Betty is back. So recently I made a video about Betty Crocker's Good and Easy cookbook, the original one that was published in 1954, and those were lunch ideas. And a lot of you, in addition to wanting more recipes from that cookbook, said that you wanted some recipes from this one. So I thought, why not? Let's keep it going here. I love Betty. I love her cookbooks. I love her recipes. And if you're new here, yes, I know Betty Crocker is not real, but I choose to think of Betty the way I think of Santa Claus. I think she lives on in our hearts, and I like to talk about her as though she's real. I'm trying out this recipe for French breakfast puffs, and these puffs come from the 4th meal section of the cookbook. Years ago, I tried a recipe from, I believe it was Taste of Home magazine, for something called donut muffins. And these French breakfast puffs really make me think of those donut muffins. So I'm pretty interested to see if they're similar. The texture of the donut muffins I made years ago they were kind of like a cake donut, if you know the difference between like a cake donut and a yeast donut. I'm preheating my oven to 350 degrees, and first ingredient is soft shortening. I personally, when I need to use shortening, I like to use the Crisco sticks. I think they measure very easily, they store very well, and they just work well for me, but use whatever shortening you like. And sugar. And I'm gonna mix that up a little bit. So now that that's mixed, I'm gonna add my egg. And then mix that in as well. Let's give that a scrape. Lovely. Now I'm gonna set it aside. Take this out of the way, and coming in with my flour here. So I have to mix in my baking powder, salt, and nutmeg. And I'm just gonna give those a little bit of a whisk with my twist whisk. Perfect. Shift everything around again. So now I'm gonna be adding my flour mixture along with some milk, and I'm gonna alternate between those 2 ingredients. So we'll add a little flour, mix that in. Gotta say, I love the texture of this. It is dreamy. It's been years since I made those donut muffins that I mentioned earlier, so I don't exactly remember the mixing process on those. So let's add a little of the milk. Flour. And I know it seems like there's not a lot of flavoring to these, but once they're baked, I'm gonna dip them in melted butter and roll them in cinnamon and sugar. So that should make them delicious, I think. Let's add the rest of our milk. That is what it looks like. This is very thick. It is not pourable. So I'm gonna be using a spoon to put this into my muffin tin. So I have my muffin tin here. And, I've chosen to use baking spray to prepare the muffin tin. I'm not using paper liners because once these come out, I have to roll them in melted butter and cinnamon and sugar, as I mentioned. I guess you could use paper liners, but then you would have to peel all of them. You could also use Crisco or shortening. I've seen people make a cake release paste, and that looks magical. I've never tried it, but it looks awesome, so I think I'm gonna have to try it. So I'm gonna start filling these. It's almost, I don't know, it's like a little softer than cookie dough. That's how I would describe the texture. And there we are, ready for the oven. So I'm going to bake these at 350 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes. I'll probably start closer to 20 and keep an eye on them. Just pulled these out of the oven, and they came out of the tin no problem. Now I have to make a little assembly line. I have some sugar in here. Move that off to the side. I need to mix my cinnamon with the sugar. And you're supposed to do this whole thing while they're still hot, and they are still very hot. So in this dish, I have some melted butter. Set up my little line here. It's gonna go puff, butter, cinnamon sugar plate. I know my hands are gonna get messy during this, but it's all right. It's all gonna be worth it. I love the way these turned out. They're a little bit craggy on the top, I guess you could say, lumpy. So if you wanted to try and smooth them out, you certainly could, but I kind of like how they look. And I think that those little bumps on the top are gonna make them a little like crispy, kind of. I ended up baking these for almost exactly 20 minutes and that was enough. So just keep an eye on them. Your oven could vary. I think all that's left to do is to try one. And it's gonna be a little messy, I know. We'll try this one. Pretty similar to what I remember from that Taste of Home recipe years ago, texture-wise at least. The cinnamon sugar is pretty heavy, so this is definitely a sweet treat. There's a little bit of a crispness outside, and it reminds me of you know, the fall when you get like cider donuts, where they're freshly fried. They get a little crisp layer on the outside, and it's very fluffy and light on the inside. These are baked, so if you don't want to like make homemade donuts and fry them, this is a great alternative, I think. And they're delicious warm, of course they are, but I do think you could maybe make these a little bit ahead of time. I even think, you know, you could, if you don't want to do the cinnamon sugar part right away, you could bake them and then dip them in the warm butter and cinnamon sugar like at the last minute. Actually, that would have been a great idea to do that. I think I could, you know, freeze half of these and then kind of do that part as I wanted to have them, but delicious. I really like this one. Next up, I'm going to be making some quick baked peaches. And yes, I do have a new glass baking dish. This pattern is called Blue Heaven, and it is by Fire King. I grew up with custard cups that had this pattern on them, so I just could not leave this dish behind. So first, I'm just taking some canned peach halves that I have drained, and I'm placing them in my glass baking dish. I have some butter that I have cut up into small cubes, and I'm just placing a little bit of that into each peach half. Next, I'm sprinkling each peach half with just a little bit of ground mace. Now, if you don't have ground mace or you don't want to buy ground mace, you can just use nutmeg. It's a very similar flavor. The final ingredient is lemon zest. My mom gave me this little microplane zester for Christmas. It does a fantastic job. I will go ahead and link it in the description down below. The zest kind of goes into this like little spot in the zester. It just makes it very easy to collect. And that's it. This is ready to go into the oven at 425 for about 12 minutes. Smells very, very much like mace. It's got a nutmeggy scent to it. So mace is actually, it's just like the outside, it's like a webby coating on the outside of the nutmeg. I'll insert a photo so you know what I'm talking about. So if you don't have ground mace, just use nutmeg. It's a very similar kind of scent, very similar kind of taste. I would say that the mace is maybe just like a little bit stronger, a little bit brighter in color. And of course I had it left over from my St. Patrick's Day video. So any chance to use it up, right? Okay, I'm just cutting this up into little manageable bites. Very simple, but tastes very good with that like citrusy, the lemon zest. I love warm baked fruit in general. And I think you could probably do this with like a fresh peach. These are canned peaches as per the recipe. They don't have like a lot of extra like sweetening to them, but I don't think they need it. If you like a peach flavor, I think you would enjoy this. With that little bit of butter, simple seasonings. You could probably add a little brown sugar if you wanted to. I would do it as is. My other thought, if you didn't want to have this for breakfast, just add a little tiny scoop of vanilla ice cream and there you have it. It's dessert. I'm trying out these buffet eggs and, you know, basically they're just jazzed up scrambled eggs, but I think the additional ingredients are going to add a lot of flavor. So first, I gotta melt a little butter in here. And while that is melting, I'm gonna go ahead and beat 3 eggs. I'm cutting this recipe down by into thirds, I guess. I'll have the full recipe in the description down below. The butter is mostly melted, so now I have some green onions. And I just need to let those cook for a minute. While the green onions are over cooking and doing their thing, I have some more ingredients to add to the eggs. That is some dried beef and some cottage cheese. And I just need to mix that all together. The dried beef has been soaked in hot water and then cut into thin strips, by the way. Back to the green onions. Let's see what we're doing. So to those green onions, I'm adding my egg mixture. And then I just have to scramble them, basically. Cook like I would any scrambled eggs. I love using heat-resistant spatulas to make my scrambled eggs. So I'll get these cooked through and then I'll give them a taste. I think those look wonderful, especially in my little blue dish here. These smell great. I really love scrambled eggs anyway. They are a frequent breakfast item for me. So I was very excited to try this. I have had scrambled eggs and have made scrambled eggs with cottage cheese before. It gives everything a nice texture, a nice flavor. If you've ever tried a recipe for copycat Starbucks egg bites, most of the recipes that I have tried involve taking eggs and cottage cheese and blending them together. And it just gives everything like a really wonderful flavor and texture. Like, I don't know if you've ever had those egg bites, they have like a little bit of a different texture than just like plain eggs. So let's go. Let's try this. You'll notice there was no salt added to these eggs. Dried beef is very salty, so. That is good. Okay. That's very tasty. I know it was kind of simple. Just adding a few extra things to your scrambled eggs can really change things up if you're kind of tired of the same thing every day. I think I am going to make this into a breakfast wrap because I think that would be delicious. If the rest of these survive, I'm gonna make them into a breakfast wrap. But they are very tasty and I am enjoying myself. Yeah, I did cut this recipe down. I'll have the full recipe in the description down below. But can you just imagine like having a little breakfast gathering of a few people and having a nice big like chafing dish or warming tray of these beautiful eggs ready to serve? I would love to go to that party, so please invite me. Betty Crocker's new Good and Easy cookbook was published in 1962. And yes, I do happen to have a copy of just the original Good and Easy cookbook from 1954 that I recently did a video about. And I think I even mentioned in that video, I love how the covers are similar but different. They both have this sort of like brick background, but the original is an illustration. And this one, the 1962 version, this is a photograph. And I'm not sure if I showed the back cover of that in any other video. So here it is. I love how they kind of kept it similar somehow. Like I don't know. I know it's not exactly the same, but I think, you know, it kind of sticks with a very similar kind of color scheme and look. And I think that's so cool how they did that. I'm going to talk about the binding because I always talk about the binding. It's my favorite one. This like metal double ring kind of binding. I wanted to cover some breakfast ideas. I've really been liking the mix and match kind of menu, I guess. Like that's what I did for the other Good and Easy cookbook, was I took 3 things that you could kind of like either eat on their own or mix and match into a full menu. And that's what I wanted to do here. I think you could take all 3 of the recipes I made if you were having guests over for breakfast or brunch and make a full menu, or you could just do these things individually for yourself if you've got a little extra time in the morning. The pictures, the illustrations. I mean, I know these are just bowls of cereal, okay? I love them. I think they look so good. Just the way that they've kind of composed this. It's like a whole little section on cereals, things you can use to put on top of cereals, you know, things you can serve with cereal instead of milk. Probably not to my taste. I don't eat a lot of cereal anyway, but that's okay. It says instead of milk, you can try pouring these over your cereal: eggnog, softened ice cream, whipped cream, softened fruit-flavored sherbets. Lots of great photographs in here. Oh, look at this. I love the casserole dish that they used for this one. These are in the breakfast section. But we have some really fun illustrations kind of all over the pages. This is a very common theme in not just Betty Crocker cookbooks of this time, but a lot of different ones. So this one is just, I don't know, it's cute. It's got like a lot of cute little ingredients here. Ooh, I have to show you this menu because you know I love a menu, but this menu is meant for men. Cranberry orange cocktail, Sunday morning sausage ring, which is this. with eggs a la king and wild blueberry muffins. Somehow that is meant for men. They have a lot of those little menu boxes in here. Some Sunday morning, hopefully that's picking up. It says chilled tomato juice, tricks with milk. Tricks and tomato juice. Scrambled eggs and Brazil nut coffee cake. So it's kind of a combination. A lot of times the menus, it's like, you know, an egg dish, a baked good, or kind of like grain, and then maybe some fruit. And that's what I did. I didn't follow a specific menu from this book. I put my own together with things that I wanted to try. I have to show you this too. I mean, there's too many of these. If I could show you every single one of these like illustrations that are throughout the book, I would, but this would be a very long video. Let's look at some more pictures and more photographs, because you know that's one of the reasons I enjoy these books. Oh, these look good. These actually kind of look like the fudge melt-away bars, or as my Canadian friends informed me, Nanaimo bars. Those are the same thing as, or very similar to the fudge melt-away bars from the cookie book. I don't think that's what these are, but they look a little bit like that. Brownie confections is what these are called. It says to bake brownies. Okay, from where? Oh, a brownie mix, probably a Betty Crocker brownie mix. Bake brownies, brown a 1/4 cup soft butter to a delicate brown. So we've got some brown butter going on. Blend with 2 cups of sifted confectioner's sugar. Stir in 2 tablespoons of cream and 1 tablespoon of vanilla until smooth. Holy cow, does this sound good. I think I even have a box of brownie mix in my pantry right now, and these are happening. So it's like brownies, like a brown butter icing, and then a very, very thin coating of unsweetened chocolate, which is one of the things I like about those fudge melt-away bars. It makes a nice thin, shattery topping. Wow. Okay, those are happening. Those are happening. Ooh, look at this. This is a fancy spread of canapes and appetizers. Oh, they just make everything look so beautiful and abundant in these cookbooks. I said that recently in another video. Oh, I think it was my Easter brunch video. Just those table settings, the way that they're so beautifully showcased with just a huge spread of food. I love all kinds of cookbooks, even the ones with no photos, even the ones with very simple, you know, single dish photographs, but something about those tables with like that full, colorful spread. Just love it. Also, look at these. Are those all, so it looks like turkeys, but maybe also a chicken or two. I just thought that was very cute. Just like the original Good and Easy cookbook, this book is divided into breakfast, lunch, dinner, and 4th meal. These recipes they're supposed to be good and easy, and really, so far everything that I've tried across the 2 cookbooks have been both. I kind of like that the instructions are simple. The ingredients are pretty easy to find. You're not going to get anything too out of the ordinary. Even for the early 1960s, I think most of this was readily available. Ooh, that looks good. It's a Frankfurter supper dish. What is that? Chili enchiladas? I think these are chili enchiladas, but they look awfully good. Maybe I'm just hungry. Oh, wait. Oh, I just noticed something. Along with the chili enchilada recipe, there's a little recipe at the end for something called speedy tortillas. Can you see? Yeah. And the speedy tortillas are made with Bisquick. I mean, Bisquick is a General Mills product, and of course it would be integrated into one of Betty Crocker's cookbooks. Intriguing. I don't know. Has anybody ever made tortillas from Bisquick? I almost think I have to try it. I'm so curious about Bisquick tortillas. I don't know. If you've tried making tortillas from Bisquick, I have to hear about it. So please leave me a comment. I want to chat about this. Well, okay. Is it time? I think it might be time to talk about the recipes that I made today. Let's start with the French breakfast puffs. So even though these were called French breakfast puffs, they come to us from the 4th meal section. So they were kind of like a coffee bread. Like this is the section where you would get like coffee get together kind of recipes or snacks, gatherings, that kind of thing. Also, one quickly before I move on and talk about that recipe, this is adorable. And it's even like got the little gold medal kind of label on it. How cute. Anyway, French breakfast puffs, those were really, really good. They were very similar to a recipe that I made years and years ago for something called donut muffins. If you love a cinnamon sugar cake donut, you will enjoy these quite a bit. You can serve them warm. I did sample one while it was warm, and I had some left over. I gave a few to the neighbors. They liked them too. You know, I've kind of been snacking on them over the last couple of days. I have to say, I actually think I like them better when they are not warm. And maybe when they're even like a day old. I don't know why. The texture somehow becomes even more donut-like in that way. I think I would maybe, I kind of wanted a little bit more like nutmeg flavor to them, or maybe like cinnamon. I would maybe up the spices in those. But overall, I think the texture was lovely. The flavor was really good. I love cinnamon sugar anything, so those were a real treat, and you can definitely make them ahead of time for whatever you're doing. So if you want to do kind of like a breakfast prep thing, very good. Like it works perfectly. It works beautifully. So next I made some quick baked peaches. This was not like a very precise recipe. It was like take the peaches and put these things on them and bake them. And you can do this with pear halves as well. I enjoy baked fruit quite a lot. These were really delicious. I would say not super duper sweet. They relied on the sweetness of the fruit itself and like whatever juice or syrup they were in. You know, you do drain them, but of course some of that kind of stays behind. And then you just put a little butter and ground mace. You can use nutmeg if you don't have mace or you don't want to go buy mace. Some lemon zest, which that lemon zest worked so well with the peaches. It tasted really, really good. Gave it just that little pop of citrus. If you wanted to sweeten these up, you certainly could. I don't personally think they needed it. I think they would make a really good dish for breakfast, but also, as I suggested, you could eat them as a dessert for like dinner. If you really want to like amp it up, you could make them into a dessert by putting a little scoop of vanilla ice cream with them. Very good, very easy, very quick. You don't have to do anything too complicated. Oh, it also says you have the option to garnish these with chopped nuts. I don't personally think it needed it. I think like the flavors from the zest, the butter, and the ground mace were kind of like enough. And I liked the texture of the peaches by themselves, so I probably would leave the chopped nuts out of this, like I did for the recipe. You know, maybe not something that you always think of doing like a baked fruit, especially something that's not like a baked apple, you know, some other kind of fruit. And finally, the buffet eggs. Those are so good. You know, I can't overstate how much I enjoy just like jazzing up scrambled eggs. You know, scrambled eggs are, if you do it right, scrambled eggs are delicious on their own. I prefer like not a completely like soft scramble, maybe kind of like a medium scramble. You can add different things to them in any number of ways. This was green onions, dried beef, and the cottage cheese. So I really thought the cottage cheese was pretty essential here just to maintain the moistness of the eggs and like the texture, especially like it says buffet eggs, so you are kind of meant to serve these to a group of people. It's not necessarily something you'd make for yourself, although I did, and you can just cut down on all the ingredients and, you know, make them for yourself or for two people. This is the full recipe makes 6 servings, but I think the cottage cheese helps. So it's something where if you needed to make it and you needed to keep it warm in like a chafing dish or in a warming tray, the eggs wouldn't get like dried out the way that eggs sometimes can like on a buffet. The cottage cheese kind of helps them stay, you know, delicious and a good texture. And then of course the saltiness of the dried beef. You don't really need to add extra salt. I love green onions. I love green onions in so many things. I don't know, they just add like such a nice like springy flavor to things, especially eggs. You know, I don't always think about adding them to eggs necessarily, but it's probably something I should do on a regular basis because they make everything so delicious. I sampled some of the eggs, probably a few more spoonfuls than I showed on camera because they were so good. And then I saved the rest, and I'm going to make them actually into breakfast tacos tomorrow morning because I think, you know, you can eat them by themselves, but I think they're going to be great if I put them on some little like tortillas, maybe with a little extra cheese, whatever you want to do. I think just the addition of a few extra ingredients made those scrambled eggs into something very special. I hope you liked this video, and I hope it inspired you to try some new things for your breakfast in the morning, or maybe to host a little breakfast get together. If you love cookbooks and recipes from Betty Crocker, I have an entire playlist and I will link it in the description down below. I have a Patreon, so if you want to go ahead and check that out and join, I'll leave a link in the description so that you can do that. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.